Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, watching the stars through the main viewport. The ship had been patrolling the outer rim of human space for 3 months now. It was quiet work, mostly checking on mining stations and cargo ships. Jake liked the peace. After 20 years in the United Earth Navy, he had seen enough fighting. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," called out Lieutenant Danny Webb from the communications station. His voice carried a note of confusion. "It's encrypted with diplomatic codes, but the signal is really weak." Jake walked over to the communications console. The signal was breaking up badly, full of static and interference. "Where is it coming from?" "That's the weird part, sir. It's coming from the Galactic core, but it's using our encryption." "Has to be from Ambassador Valdez." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Ambassador Kira Valdez had been humanity's representative to the Galactic Council for 3 years. She was stationed on Nexus Prime, the neutral world where all the alien species met to talk about politics and trade. The fact that she was sending an encrypted message instead of normal diplomatic channels meant something was very wrong. "Put it through to my ready room," Jake ordered. "And Danny, not a word about this to anyone until I know what we're dealing with." Jake hurried to his private office behind the bridge. The message was already waiting on his computer screen. Kira's face appeared, but she looked terrible. Her usually neat brown hair was messy, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Behind her, Jake could see what looked like emergency lighting. "If anyone receives this message, please forward it to Earth Command immediately," Kira began, her voice shaking. "The situation here is beyond critical. 3 days ago, we received reports of attacks on the outer colonies of the Zephyrian Empire. At first, we thought it was just another border dispute between species. We were wrong." The image flickered, and Jake had to adjust the signal to keep it clear. "They're back," Kira continued. "The Devourers. I know that sounds impossible. Everyone thought they were just legends, stories the old species told to scare their children, but they're real, and they're here." Jake had heard the stories too. Every species in the galaxy had legends about the Devourers, mechanical beings that consumed entire worlds, turning everything they touched into fuel for their expansion. But that was supposed to be ancient history, something that happened thousands of years ago. "The Zephyrian homeworld is gone." Kira's voice was barely above a whisper. 12 billion people, just gone. The Devourers didn't just destroy it. They consumed it. Turned the entire planet into raw materials for their fleet. The Galactic Council sent 3 battle fleets to stop them. All 3 fleets were destroyed. Jake sank into his chair. The Galactic Council had the most advanced military in the galaxy. Their ships used energy weapons that could tear apart moons, shields that could stop anything. If they couldn't stop these Devourers, what chance did anyone have? "The Council is in emergency session," Kira continued. "Half the member species are talking about running, finding some way to escape to another galaxy. The other half want to fight, but they don't know how. Every weapon they have, every tactic they try, the Devourers adapt to it. They learn from every battle and become stronger." The message cut to static for a moment, then came back. Kira looked directly into the camera, and Jake could see desperation in her eyes. "That's why I'm sending this message. For the first time in galactic history, the Council is asking for help from humanity. They've always said we were too violent, too primitive to join their peaceful confederation. Now they're begging for our violence. They need humanity's warriors." Jake shook his head. Humanity had been trying to join the Galactic Council for 50 years. Every time they were told that humans were too aggressive, too willing to fight. The aliens preferred to solve problems with diplomacy and technology. Now, when facing something that couldn't be reasoned with, they wanted humanity's help. "The Devourers are moving toward the galactic core," Kira said. "They'll reach the major population centers within 6 months. Trillions of lives are at stake. I don't know if humanity can make a difference, but we have to try. The galaxy is crying out for help, and we might be the only ones who can answer." The message ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. He sat in silence for several minutes, trying to process what he had just heard. Finally, he activated his ship's communication system. This is Commander Morrison to Earth Command. Priority Alpha transmission. Patch me through to Admiral Carter. Immediately. Within minutes, Admiral Lisa Carter's face appeared on the screen. She was a tough woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been Jake's commanding officer for 10 years, and he had never seen her look surprised. Until now. Jake, what's so urgent that you're using emergency channels? Jake transmitted Kira's message. He watched Carter's expression change as she listened to the ambassador's words. When it finished, Carter was quiet for a long moment. How reliable is this intelligence? She asked. Ambassador Valdez has never been wrong about galactic politics, Jake replied, and the encryption codes are correct. This came from her, Carter nodded slowly. I'll need to take this directly to President Hughes. If this is real, if the Devourers are back, then everything changes? What are your orders, sir? Turn your ship around and head back to Earth, full speed. If we're going to war, we'll need every ship we have. Carter paused. Jake, you realize what this means? For 50 years, they've told us we're too violent for their club. Now they want us to save them. Jake smiled grimly. Ironic, isn't it? The galaxy's barbarians might be their last hope. Indeed, Carter out. The connection ended, and Jake returned. To the bridge. Lieutenant Webb looked up expectantly. Set course for Earth, maximum speed, Jake ordered. And send a message to all department heads. We're going to war. As the Valiant Dawn turned toward home, Jake wondered if humanity was ready for what was coming. They had spent decades building a peaceful civilization, exploring the stars and trying to prove they belonged among the galactic community. Now they would have to become warriors again. The galaxy had cried out for help, and humanity would answer. The only question was whether they would be strong enough to make a difference. Behind them, the stars seemed dimmer, as if something was consuming the light itself. Captain Ryan Torres watched the refugee ships through the viewport of his command cruiser Steel Guardian. There were hundreds of them, all different shapes and sizes. Some looked like giant crystals that caught the light from nearby stars. Others were more like floating bubbles of gas held together by energy fields. A few looked like metal insects the size of city blocks. How many survivors total? Ryan asked his first officer, Commander Lisa Stone. Just over 2 million, Lisa replied, checking her tablet. That's all that's left of 3 entire star systems. The Devourers hit them 6 days ago. Ryan shook his head. 2 million survivors from billions of people. The math was horrible. Any word from the other human fleets? Captain Patterson's group is helping with evacuations near the Helios cluster. Commander Brooks is setting up supply lines for the refugees. We're the only ones who've made it this far into the combat zone. Ryan's advanced reconnaissance force consisted of 12 ships, 6 destroyers, 4 cruisers, and 2 support vessels. It wasn't much, but they were the fastest ships in the human fleet. Their job was to scout ahead and figure out what they were really facing. Sir, we have a delegation from the refugee ships requesting permission to come aboard, reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. Send them over, Ryan said. Time we learned what we're up against. An hour later, Ryan sat in the ship's conference room with the strangest group he had ever seen. The Zephyrian representative looked like a walking diamond, her crystal body reflecting the room's lights in rainbow patterns. The Nebulan delegate was harder to look at, a cloud of purple gas that somehow held together and spoke through vibrations in the air. The Cathara ambassador was the most disturbing, a 6 foot tall insect with too many eyes and clicking mandibles. We are grateful for your assistance, the Zephyrian said, her voice sounding like wind chimes. But we must warn you, the Devourers are unlike anything you have faced before. Tell us about their ships, Lisa said, taking notes on her tablet. The Nebulan's gas cloud shifted colors as it spoke. They do not build ships as we understand them. They take destroyed vessels and rebuild them into something new. Our own weapons turned against us. How do they fight? Ryan asked. They learn. The Cathara clicked. In our first battle, we destroyed many of their ships with our plasma cannons. In the second battle, all their ships had shields designed to stop plasma weapons. By the third battle, they had weapons that used our own plasma technology against. Ryan felt a chill. An enemy that could adapt to any weapon, any tactic. What about their ground forces? Worse than their ships. The Zephyrian's light dimmed. They do not just kill, they convert. Our people, our soldiers, turned into biomechanical slaves. We fought our own families in the final battles. Dr. Amy Foster, the fleet xenobiologist, leaned forward. Do you have any recordings of the battles? Anything that might help us understand their technology? The Cathara produced a small device with one of its 4 arms. This contains tactical data from the last battle at Kepler 442b, but I warn you, the images are disturbing. The room's lights dimmed as the device projected a holographic battle scene. Ryan watched human-sized mechanical creatures moving through. The ruins of a crystal city. They moved wrong, too fast and too coordinated. When they encountered defending soldiers, they didn't just kill them. They injected something, and within minutes, the defenders were fighting for the other side. They're using nanotechnology, Dr. Foster said, her voice tight with horror. Microscopic robots that rewrite biological systems at the cellular level. Can it be stopped? Lisa asked. The conversion process takes time, the Nebulan replied. But once it is complete, there is no cure. The mind is gone, replaced by machine logic. The meeting continued for another hour, but Ryan had heard enough. When the aliens left, he called his senior staff together. Opinions? He asked. They're scared, said Commander Stone. These are advanced civilizations, and they're running like frightened children. Can you blame them? Dr. Foster pulled up her notes. Everything they've tried has failed. Their energy weapons, their shields, their tactics, the Devourers have adapted to all of it. What about us? Asked Lieutenant Foster. Do we have anything? They haven't seen? Ryan smiled grimly. That's exactly what I'm wondering. Danny, get me a secure channel to Earth Command. I need to talk to Admiral Carter. The connection took several minutes to establish due to the distance. When Admiral Carter appeared on the screen, she looked tired but determined. Report, Captain Torres. We've interviewed refugee survivors, ma'am. The situation is worse than we thought. The Devourers don't just destroy, they learn and adapt. Every weapon used against them makes them stronger. What's your assessment of our chances? Ryan looked at his officers. Unknown, sir, but I have a theory. All the galactic species use energy weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams, antimatter. Projectors, what if that's exactly why they keep losing? Carter raised an eyebrow. Explain. The Devourers adapt to whatever they face. But they've never faced kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, or nuclear warheads. Our primitive technology might be their blind spot. You're suggesting we fight advanced aliens with bullets and bombs? I'm suggesting we fight them with weapons they can't adapt to because they've never seen them before. Carter was quiet. For a moment, it's crazy enough to work. What do you need? Every kinetic weapon we have. Railguns, missile launchers, and as many nuclear warheads as you can spare. If we're going to test this theory, we need to hit them hard before they can adapt. Done. A supply convoy is already en route to your position, but Torres, be careful. If your theory is wrong, we might lose our only reconnaissance force. Understood, Admiral. But if we're right, we might have found their weakness. The connection ended, and Ryan turned to his crew. You heard the Admiral. We're about to find out if humanity's old-fashioned approach to war can save the galaxy. 2 days later, Ryan's fleet detected a Devourer patrol, 12 ships moving through the debris field of a destroyed world. They were sleek, metallic vessels that seemed to shift and change shape as they moved. All ships, battle stations, Ryan ordered. Time to see if our theory holds up. The Steel Guardian and her sister ships moved to intercept, their railguns charged and nuclear missiles ready. For the first time in this war, the Devourers were about to face weapons they had never seen before. The battle that would change everything was about to begin. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching the massive human fleet assemble around her flagship. 200 ships filled the space around the rally point, everything from heavy battleships to converted mining vessels. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. "Final count, Admiral," reported Captain Ben Murphy, her fleet coordinator. 147 military vessels, 38 converted civilian ships, and 15 supply transports. Total crew complement, 87,000. Lisa nodded, studying the tactical display. The converted civilian ships worried her most. Mining vessels equipped with particle accelerators, cargo haulers fitted with missile pods, even a few luxury liners turned into troop transports. They would be vulnerable in battle, but they were needed. The enemy had too many ships for the regular Navy to handle alone. "What's the status on the Thunderstrike?" she asked. "Final weapons tests completed yesterday," Murphy replied. "The antimatter cannons are ready for combat. Captain Gray reports her crew is eager to test them on real targets," Lisa smiled. The Thunderstrike was humanity's newest and most powerful battleship. It had been designed for deep space exploration, but the recent crisis had turned it into a weapon of war. Its antimatter cannons could theoretically destroy a moon, but they had never been tested in actual combat. "Signal from Captain Torres, Admiral," called out Lieutenant Sam Webb from communications. "He's requesting permission to join the main fleet. Put him through." Ryan Torres' face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but excited. "Admiral, I have good news. Our theory about kinetic weapons was correct. We engaged a Devourer patrol 3 days ago and destroyed all 12 ships without losing a single vessel." Lisa felt hope surge through her chest. "Tell me everything." "Their adaptive shields were designed to stop energy weapons. Our railguns and missiles went right through them like they weren't even there. The Devourers tried to adapt during the battle, but kinetic weapons don't. Give them anything to copy. You can't adapt to a chunk of metal moving at 30,000 kilometers per second. Casualties? None on our side. We lost some armor plating and had minor system damage, but that's it. The Devourers were completely unprepared for our weapons." Lisa felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since this war began, humanity had an advantage. "Return to the fleet, Captain. We have work to do." The connection ended, and Lisa turned to her staff. "You heard him, our weapons work. Now we need to use them before the Devourers figure out how to counter them." "What are your orders, Admiral?" asked Commander Helen Brooks, the fleet's tactical officer. "We're going to hit them where it hurts most. The Helios cluster. Intelligence reports show 3 Devourer harvesting fleets stripping those systems bare. If we can destroy those fleets, we save millions of lives and deal a major blow to their expansion." The human fleet moved out 6 hours later, heading for the Helios cluster at maximum speed. Lisa stood in the flag bridge, watching the stars streak past through the viewport. Beside her, Captain Murphy was coordinating with the other ships. "Admiral, we're getting reports from our alien allies," Murphy said. "Fleet Commander Zarthik of the Valdorian Empire wants to know our battle plan." Lisa had been expecting this. The surviving alien fleets had agreed to fight alongside humanity, but they were nervous about human tactics. "Tell him we'll brief all commanders when we reach the combat zone." 2 days later, the combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Helios cluster. Lisa stared at the tactical display in shock. The Devourers had been busy. 3. Entire star systems were being systematically destroyed, their planets being broken apart and fed into massive processing ships. "My God," whispered Murphy, "they're eating whole worlds." "How many ships?" Lisa asked. "Sensors show over 300 Devourer vessels," reported the sensor officer. "They're organized into 3 main fleets, each centered around a massive harvesting ship." Lisa activated the fleet communications. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. What we're seeing here is beyond anything we imagined. The Devourers aren't just conquering these systems, they're consuming them. Every minute we delay, millions more. Lives are lost." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. "I know our tactics seem brutal to our alien allies. Nuclear weapons, ramming attacks, kinetic bombardment, they call it barbaric. But sometimes barbarism is exactly what's needed. we're going to hit them with everything we have. The first target was the harvesting fleet around Helios 3, Captain. Mike Patterson led a squadron of destroyers in a direct assault while Commander Brooks coordinated the evacuation of refugee ships fleeing the system. All ships, weapons free, Lisa ordered. Show them what humanity can do. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. The human ships closed to point-blank range, their railguns hammering through devourer shields like paper. Nuclear missiles tore apart enemy formations, and when conventional weapons weren't enough, human captains ordered ramming attacks. Lisa watched the Defiant slam into a devourer command ship, both vessels disappearing in a ball of fire. The captain, Lauren Gray, had made the choice herself when her ship lost main power. 300 crew members died in that impact, but they took out a ship that had been coordinating the enemy's adaptive responses. The Devourers are trying to adapt, reported the tactical officer. They're reinforcing their hulls and adjusting their formations. Then we change our tactics, Lisa replied. All ships, Pattern Delta, focus fire on their processing ships. The human fleet shifted tactics, using their superior maneuverability to hit the large, slow harvesting vessels. The Devourers' adaptive systems couldn't keep up with the constant changes in human strategy. Meanwhile, Fleet Commander Zarthik-S alien ships provided cover for the evacuation. His energy weapons were less effective against the adapted Devourer shields, but they could still protect the fleeing civilians. Admiral, called out Murphy, we're taking heavy casualties. The converted civilian ships can't take much more punishment. Lisa watched the tactical display as 2 more converted cargo ships were destroyed. Brave civilian volunteers were dying to save people they had never met. Signal to all civilian vessels. Fall back to minimum safe distance. Military units press the attack. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, the Devourer harvesting fleet was destroyed, but the cost was severe. Humanity had lost 43 ships and over 12,000 crew members. The Iron Resolve itself was badly damaged, her hull scarred by Devourer weapons. But they had won. 3 star systems were saved, and over 2 million civilians had been evacuated to safety. Status report, Lisa said, slumping in her command chair. The Devourers are retreating from the other 2 systems, Murphy reported. It looks like they're regrouping for a counterattack. Lisa nodded. They had proven that humanity's weapons could hurt the Devourers, but this was just the beginning. The real test would come when the enemy adapted to their tactics. Send a message. To Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them we need every ship they can spare. The Devourers know about us now, and they're not going to be caught off guard again. As the human fleet regrouped and tended to their wounded, Lisa stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were learning from this battle, preparing new defenses and weapons. The next fight would be even harder, but for now, humanity had shown the galaxy that they could fight back. The barbarians had become the galaxy's protectors. Vice Admiral Tom Nash stood in the briefing room of the Warhammer, studying the holographic display of Kepler 442b. The planet looked like a nightmare. What had once been a green world with oceans and forests was now a massive factory covered in metal structures and processing plants. The Devourers have been working on this world for 2 months, said Major Kate Sullivan, commander of the 3rd Marine Assault Division. Our intelligence shows they've converted the entire population into biomechanical workers. Over 8 billion people. Tom rubbed his beard, thinking. Admiral Carter was still recovering from her injuries, leaving him in command of the fleet. He had been a Marine for 15 years before transferring to the Navy, and he understood ground warfare better than most admirals. Space battles aren't enough, he said to his staff. We can destroy their fleets, but they just build more ships, using the resources they've stolen. We need to hit their production facilities directly. Sir, planetary assault against the Devourers will be suicide, warned Commander Paul Davis, his tactical officer. They've had 2 months to fortify that world. Every building, every street could be a trap. Tom nodded. You're right. It will be hell, but if we don't stop their production, this war will drag on for years. How many more systems will they consume while we're fighting their fleets? Dr. Amy Foster, who had been transferred to the flagship as senior science officer, looked up from her tablet. I've been studying the data from our previous battles. The Devourers are learning, but slowly. Their adaptation process seems to require time and multiple encounters. If we can hit them with something completely new, we might have an advantage. What do you mean? Tom asked. They've adapted to our space weapons, railguns, missiles, even nuclear warheads. But they haven't faced human ground forces yet. Our Marines fight differently than any other species in the galaxy. Major Sullivan leaned forward. Most alien species use energy weapons and fight at long range. They rely on technology and coordination. Human Marines are trained for close combat, urban warfare, and improvised tactics. Tom smiled grimly. Exactly what I was thinking. Kate, how many Marines do we have? 12,000 across the fleet, plus another 8,000 Army soldiers. Not enough for a full planetary assault, but maybe enough for surgical strikes. What's our primary target? Dr. Foster highlighted a massive structure on the planet's surface. This is their main processing center. It's where they convert organic matter into raw materials for their ships. Destroy this, and we cripple their production capacity. Tom studied the structure. It was the size of a city, surrounded by defensive installations and patrolled by converted humans. It's going to be a meat grinder. Sir, interrupted Lieutenant Jenny Miller from the communications station, we're getting reports from the other battlefronts. The Devourers are massing for a counterattack. They're bringing in ships from across the galaxy. Tom looked at the tactical display. Red dots were appearing throughout the star charts, showing Devourer fleets moving toward human positions. How long do we have? Maybe a week before they reach us in force. Then we need to move fast. Kate, prep your Marines for planetary assault. We're going to take that processing center and hold it long enough for Dr. Foster's team to plant some surprises. What kind of surprises? Dr. Foster asked. Tom grinned. The kind that go boom. Chief Engineer Murphy has been working on something special. An hour later, Chief Engineer Dan Murphy stood in the weapons lab, explaining his latest creation to the assembled officers. We call it the Silence Protocol. It's an electromagnetic pulse weapon designed specifically to disrupt Devourer technology. How does it work? Tom asked. The Devourers use quantum processors to coordinate their actions. These processors operate on a very specific frequency. If we can broadcast a counter frequency at high power, it should shut down their entire network. Dr. Foster examined the device. It was about the size of a briefcase, covered in antennas and power cables. How do we deploy it? That's the problem, Murphy said. It needs to be placed inside their main processing center to work. The signal has to be broadcast from within their network. Tom nodded. A suicide mission? Not necessarily, said Major Sullivan. If we can get a small team inside, they could plant the device and fight their way out. What about the range? Tom asked. From the processing center, it should affect all Devourer units on the planet, maybe even ships in orbit. Tom looked at his officers. It's risky, but it might be our only chance to test this weapon before the main battle. If it works, we can use it on a larger scale. 2 days later, the assault began. Tom watched from the bridge as Marine dropships descended toward Kepler 442b. The planet's surface was a maze of metal structures and processing plants, all connected by tubes and conveyor belts. First wave is taking heavy fire, reported Commander Davis. The Devourers have anti-aircraft weapons covering the entire landing zone. What about the ground forces? Major Sullivan's Marines have secured a beachhead, but they're facing stiff resistance. The converted humans are fighting like machines. No fear, no hesitation. Tom activated the communication system. Kate, what's your status? Major Sullivan's voice crackled through the speakers. We're in the city, sir, but it's worse than we expected. The converted humans know the terrain perfectly, and they're coordinating their attacks. It's like fighting an entire population that shares one mind. Can you reach the processing center? We're trying, but we're taking heavy casualties. These aren't normal enemies. They feel no pain, need no rest, and they're using our own people against us. Tom watched the tactical display as red dots moved through the city streets. Each dot represented a squad of Marines fighting for their lives against an enemy that had once been human. "Sir," called out Dr. Foster, "I'm detecting something strange. The Devourers are changing their tactics during the battle. They're adapting to our Marines' movements in real time." Tom cursed under his breath. "How is that possible?" "The converted humans are transmitting information back to the central processing unit. Every Marine tactic, every weapon, every movement is being analyzed and countered. Kate, you need to change your approach. The enemy is learning from every move you make." "Understood, sir." "We're going to try something they've never seen before." On the planet's surface, Major Sullivan gathered her remaining squad leaders. "Forget everything we taught you about urban combat. The enemy knows all our standard tactics. From now on, we improvise everything." Sergeant First Class Maria Santos nodded. "What about the mission objective?" "We're still going for the processing center. But we're going to get there by doing the opposite of what they expect. Instead of using our high-tech equipment, we go low-tech. Instead of coordinating our attacks, we scatter and cause chaos." The Marines split into small teams, each taking a different route through the city. They abandoned their communication systems, used improvised weapons, and fought with pure human instinct instead of military doctrine. For the first time since the battle began, the Devourers seemed confused. Their adaptation systems couldn't counter tactics that had no pattern or logic. "It's working," Sullivan reported. "We're making progress toward the target." Tom watched the battle unfold, feeling both pride and horror. His Marines were fighting like wild animals, using creativity and desperation instead of training and technology. It was effective, but the cost was terrible. Double quotes, Kate. "How close are you to the processing center?" 2 blocks away, sir, but I've lost half my force." "We need those reinforcements now." Tom looked at the tactical display. The second wave of Marines was ready to deploy, but the landing zones were still under heavy fire. "All ships, this is Admiral Nash. Cover the landing zones with everything we have. Our people are counting on us." The battle for Kepler 442b was far from over, but humanity was proving once again that sometimes the best tactics were the ones that made no sense at all. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the rebuilt Iron Resolve, staring at the massive structure on the main screen. The Devourer Prime was bigger than anything she had ever seen, a mechanical moon floating in the dark space at the galaxy's center. It pulsed with energy, and thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. "Intelligence reports were right," said Captain Lauren Gray, commander of the experimental ship Defiant. "That thing is the size of Earth's moon, but it's completely artificial." Lisa nodded, studying the tactical display. 3 weeks had passed since the successful test of the silence protocol on Kepler 442b. The weapon had worked perfectly, shutting down every Devourer unit on the planet and allowing the Marines to destroy the processing center. But now they faced the source of all Devourer activity. "How many ships are we looking at?" Lisa asked. "Over 10,000, reported Commander Jack Stevens, her new tactical officer. "And that's just what we can see. There are probably more inside the structure." Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her science station. "The energy readings are off the charts. That structure is broadcasting control signals to every Devourer unit in the galaxy. If we can get the silence protocol inside and activate it at the source, we could shut down their entire network." Lisa felt a chill. The plan was simple in theory, but impossible in practice. They would have to fight through the largest enemy fleet ever assembled, penetrate the most heavily defended structure in the galaxy, and manually activate a weapon deep inside enemy territory. "What about our forces?" Lisa asked. "Every available human ship," replied Stevens. 230 vessels, including the new Thunderstrike with her antimatter cannons, plus whatever's left of the alien fleets. "Not nearly enough," Lisa said quietly, "but it's what we have." Captain Gray activated her communication system. Admiral, I've been thinking about the infiltration mission. The Defiant is our fastest ship and has the best stealth systems. If anyone can get through their defenses, it's us. Lisa shook her head. Lauren, this is a suicide mission. Once you're inside that structure, there's no way out. Maybe not, said Dr. Foster. But if we don't try, the Devourers will eventually adapt to our weapons. This might be our only chance. Lisa looked around the bridge at her officers. They all knew the odds, but they were all willing to try. Very well. Jack, you'll lead the infiltration team. Take Dr. Foster and a squad of Marines. Your job is to get the silence protocol to the central core and activate it. What about the fleet? Asked Captain Gray. We'll keep their attention focused on us. Every ship they're fighting is one less ship hunting you. The final battle began. 6 hours later. The human fleet attacked in waves, their kinetic weapons hammering through Devourer formations. The Thunderstrike led the assault, her antimatter cannons tearing apart enemy ships like paper. Lisa watched from the bridge as the battle unfolded. Human ships were dying by the dozens, but they were giving better than they got. The Devourers' adaptive systems were working, but too slowly to keep up with the chaotic human tactics. The Defiant has launched, reported Stevens. They're using the debris from destroyed ships as cover. On the Defiant, Captain Gray pushed her ship through the battle zone at maximum speed. The experimental vessel was smaller than most human ships, but it was fast and hard to detect. Behind her, the infiltration team prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. Commander, Stevens checked his equipment one final time. The silence protocol device was strapped to his back, along with enough explosives to level a city block. Dr. Foster carried the technical gear needed to interface with Devourer systems. 6 Marines, led by Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, would provide security. Approaching the structure, Gray announced. I'm reading massive energy fields and defensive systems. This is going to be rough. The Defiant slipped through the Devourer defenses like a ghost, using speed and stealth to avoid the larger weapons. But as they got closer to the structure, the defenses became thicker and more dangerous. Hull breach on Deck 3, reported the damage control officer. We're losing atmosphere. Keep going, Gray ordered. We only need to get close enough for the team to transfer. The infiltration began when the Defiant docked with a maintenance port on the outer hull of the Devourer Prime. Stevens led his team into the structure, moving through corridors that seemed to pulse with alien life. This place is alive, whispered Dr. Foster, scanning the walls with her instruments. The entire structure is one massive biological computer. The team moved deeper into the structure, following Foster's readings toward the central core. They encountered no resistance at first, but Stevens knew that wouldn't last. Contact, Santos called out, raising her rifle. Multiple hostiles approaching from ahead. The corridor filled with the sound of gunfire as the Marines engaged converted beings that had once been from dozens of different species. The creatures moved with mechanical precision, but human training and determination gave the infiltration team the edge. Core chamber is just ahead, Foster reported, checking her scanner. But the readings are getting strange. I think the structure knows. We're here. Stevens felt the walls around them begin to shift and change. The Devourer Prime was adapting to their presence, trying to trap them inside its own body. Move fast, he ordered. This place is trying to seal us in. The core chamber was a vast spherical room filled with pulsing machinery. At the center hung a crystalline structure that seemed to contain swirling galaxies of light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. That's it, Foster said, pointing at the crystal. The central processing unit for the entire Devourer network. If we can attach the silence protocol directly to it, the signal will reach every Devourer unit in the galaxy. Stevens approached the crystal, pulling the device from his back. But as he got closer, the room began to change. Mechanical tentacles emerged from the walls, and the crystal began to pulse faster. It knows what we're trying to do, Foster warned. The system is fighting back. The Marines formed a defensive circle as mechanical defenders poured into the chamber. Santos and her team held them off while Stevens worked to attach the silence protocol to the crystal core. "Almost got it," Stevens called out, his hands working frantically with the device's connections. "Just need a few more seconds. Stevens, look out!" Santos shouted. A massive mechanical arm swept toward him, but Stevens refused to move. He completed the final connection just as the arm struck, sending him flying across the chamber. "Device is attached," Foster reported. "But I need to manually activate it." She ran toward the crystal as the battle raged around her. The silence protocol was in place, but someone had to input the activation codes. Foster's fingers flew over her tablet as mechanical defenders closed in around her. "Amy, get out of there!" Stevens called out, struggling to his feet. "Not yet," she replied, her voice calm despite the chaos. "Almost got it." The activation sequence completed just as a mechanical claw reached for her. The silence protocol activated, sending its disruptive signal throughout the Devourer network. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every mechanical defender in the chamber simply stopped moving. The pulsing lights went dark and the terrifying hum of the structure faded to silence. "It worked," Foster said, hardly believing it herself. "The signal is propagating through their entire network, but the victory came at a cost. The Devourer Prime was dying around them, its systems failing. One by one. They had minutes to escape before the entire structure collapsed. "Move!" Stevens ordered. "This whole place is coming apart." The team ran through collapsing corridors as the Devourer Prime tore itself apart. Behind them, the heart of the galaxy's greatest threat was finally falling silent. Commander Jack Stevens sat in the medical bay of the rescue ship Hope's Light, watching Dr. Amy Foster sleep in the bed next to his. Both of them were covered in bandages and connected to monitoring equipment. They had barely escaped the collapsing Devourer Prime, rescued by Captain Gray's damaged Defiant in the final minutes before the structure destroyed itself. "How are you feeling?" asked Sergeant Santos, who was sitting in a chair beside his bed. She had lost 2 fingers on her left hand during the final battle, but she was alive. "Like I got hit by a moon," Stevens replied, trying to sit up. "What's the status on the silence protocol?" Santos smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her in weeks. "It worked better than anyone hoped. Every Devourer ship in the galaxy just stopped, dead in space, no movement, no signals, nothing." Stevens felt relief wash over him. "Casualties?" Santos' expression grew serious. "Heavy. We lost over half the fleet in the final battle. Admiral Carter's flagship was destroyed in the last hour of fighting. She went down with her ship, covering the retreat." Stevens closed his eyes. Lisa Carter had been one of the best officers he had ever served under. She had led humanity through its darkest hour and paid the ultimate price for victory. "What about the other fronts?" he asked. "Same story everywhere. The moment the silence protocol activated, every Devourer unit shut down. Ships, ground forces, processing facilities, everything. The war is over." Dr. Foster stirred in her bed, her eyes opening slowly. "Did it work?" she asked weakly. "It worked," Stevens said. "You saved the galaxy, Amy." Foster tried to smile but winced in pain. "We all did. Every person who fought, every ship that fell, they all contributed to this victory." 3 days later, Stevens stood in the main assembly hall of Nexus Prime, the same neutral world where the war had begun. Representatives from every species in the galaxy had gathered for the victory ceremony. The hall was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes, but the mood was somber despite the celebration. Ambassador Kira Valdez, who had started it all with her desperate message, stood at the podium addressing the assembly. "Today, we gather not just to celebrate victory, but to honor those who made it possible. When the galaxy cried out for help, humanity answered with force. But that force came at a price we must never forget." Stevens looked around the hall at the human delegation. Admiral Tom Nash, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Forces, sat with the surviving fleet commanders. Captain Lauren Gray was there, her arm in a sling from her ship's rough landing. Major Kate Sullivan represented the ground forces, though she would never walk normally again after her injuries on Kepler 442b. The official casualty reports have been compiled, Valdez continued. Humanity lost 123 ships and 47,000 personnel in this war. That represents nearly 60% of their military forces. A murmur went through the alien delegates. Many had not realized the full extent of human losses. But those numbers only tell part of the story, Valdez said. Humanity didn't just send their military to fight. They sent their miners, their merchants, their engineers, anyone who could hold a weapon or pilot a ship. They turned their entire civilization into a weapon aimed at saving ours. Fleet Commander Zarthik of the Valdorian Empire stood up. The Galactic Council wishes to offer humanity full membership and a permanent seat on the ruling council. We also propose that human military doctrine be adopted as the standard for galactic defense forces. Admiral Nash stood to respond. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars from the recent battles. We appreciate the offer, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Humanity accepts membership in the Galactic Council, but we must decline the request to moderate our military capabilities. Several alien delegates looked uncomfortable. Stevens understood why. They wanted humanity's protection, but they were still afraid of human violence. You see, Nash continued, for 50 years, this council told us we were too violent to join your peaceful confederation. You were probably right. We are violent. We do solve problems with force when diplomacy fails. But when something came along that your peaceful ways couldn't stop, you called us. Nash walked to the center of the assembly hall. The Devourers taught us something important. There will always be threats that can't be reasoned with, can't be negotiated with, can't be stopped with anything except superior firepower. Humanity will remain armed and ready because the next time the galaxy cries out for help, we intend to answer again. The alien delegates were quiet for a long moment. Finally, the crystalline Zephyrian representative spoke. What guarantees do we have that humanity won't use these weapons against us? Nash smiled grimly. The same guarantee you had when you asked for our help, our word. Humanity fights to protect, not to conquer. We proved that when we bled for worlds we'd never seen to save people we'd never met. After the ceremony, Stevens found himself on an observation deck overlooking the capital city of Nexus Prime. The city was rebuilding, replacing structures damaged in Devourer raids. Dr. Foster joined him, walking slowly with the help of a cane. Regrets? She asked. Stevens thought about all the friends they had lost, all the ships that would never come home. About the war? No, about the cost? Every day. The galaxy will remember what humanity did here, Foster said. But will humanity remember? We better, Stevens replied. Because Nash is right. This won't be the last time someone threatens the galaxy. Next time, we need to be ready. 6 months later, Stevens stood on the bridge of the Guardian, humanity's first deep space fortress. The massive station was positioned at the galaxy's edge, its sensors sweeping the dark space beyond for any sign of new threats. The Guardian was a symbol of humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Armed with the latest weapons technology and crewed by veterans of the Devourer War, it served as both protector and warning. Humanity would defend the galaxy, but they would do it their way. Any contacts on the sensors? Stevens asked the duty officer. All quiet, sir. But we're ready if anything shows up. Stevens nodded, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness between galaxies, other threats might be waiting. Ancient machines, hostile aliens, or something even worse than the Devourers, but humanity would be watching. They had answered the galaxy's cry for help once, and they had paid the price in blood and sacrifice. Now they stood guard at the edge of known space, ready to answer that cry again. The galaxy had asked for humanity's violence, and humanity had delivered. But they had also given something more valuable, their willingness to die for strangers. To sacrifice everything for people they had never met. That was the real gift humanity had given the galaxy. Not just the force to destroy their enemies, but the courage to stand between civilization and the dark dot as Stevens watched the stars. He whispered a promise that would become humanity's motto in the years to come. When the galaxy cries out, we will answer. The war was over, but humanity's watch had just begun.